Welcome back to another edition of the Friday Golf Podcast. I am your host, Andy Johnson. Today, I'm joined by Joseph LaMagna. Joseph, what are you in on?
Andy, we've talked about this a little bit already. I'm in on the idea of a cutthroat competitive fall. I don't know how you feel. I've been enjoying the fall, a lot of these tournaments, about as much as signature events or more than signature events this year. And I think the opportunity to get some of these KFT guys in, as you and I have talked about, maybe even creating a path for LIV golfers if they wanted to participate. You end up with this hodgepodge of golfers playing with a lot on the line. Like JT Poston is in the lead right now as we record, means something different to him than Michael Kim, who's trying to retain his status. And you got like Daniel Berger and Gary Woodland coming back from injuries, proven talents on the PGA Tour, trying to regain their status. There's a real opportunity here for this to be a compelling product. I've been enjoying it.
Yeah, I would echo that. I've really enjoyed the fall. I really enjoyed last week with Matt McCarty winning, and it made me, one of the big tweaks I would want to see is I'd want to see all the Korn Ferry Tour players in it. And obviously they come in to the tour with priority rankings from the tour before, but it would be neat to see them kind of slot into that, like have appropriate places that they slot into the fall and then kind of move up and down from there. It would give the tour an opportunity to kind of introduce the new players into the tour. It would give some players a little bit more of a runway to become household names on the PGA Tour. I think you saw last year, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but the PGA Tour the Korn Ferry Tour graduates were way less successful than the European Tour graduates. And I think part of that is that they get a really tough welcome to the PGA Tour. They finish their season in September, and then they don't play competitive golf again until like February, late January. They're getting into the Amex as their first event. Meanwhile, like you flip that, the top players from the European Tour are playing into mid-November in Dubai, high level golf, their version of their playoffs, and then they're coming over. Of course, they're hitting the ground running better. They're just sharper, and I think this would be a way to kind of bridge that gap and really add to the level of play in the fall, just in general.
I'm with you. And I think part of what you're hitting on with some of the lack of success from Korn Ferry Tour guys in this season, who were the graduates from the previous year. We hear all the time in golf that the margins are thin. They're really not that thin. Generally, when a golfer deserves to move up, they move up, right? That's something we've talked about on this pod. A lot of the golfers who are filling out the bottom of this field at the Shriners, for example, we kind of know that they're not signature event caliber players. There's enough of a sample size there that they probably are not. Some of these new Korn Ferry Tour, the 30 that come in, like McCarty and then 29 others, some of them might be. And if they could pick off a win or something like McCarty did, they could get into the Masters. They could get into Pebble Beach, Riviera. You got to give these guys a chance. So I'm with you on that one, Andy. What are you in on?
I am in on, I got to say, NBC gets a lot of grief. They've been slashing a lot of stuff. They've been cutting back from the production. The production necessarily hasn't been the greatest over the last few years. I got to give them a little credit. I've been in on the added rise of televised college golf this fall. Like there have been noticeably more tournaments on television, which I've really enjoyed. Just in general, speaking holistically about the top level of college golf, they play better courses than the professionals, and there are a lot more unique events. I think they're a little bit more fun. There's some dynamics to watch. You have the team championship. You have individuals. Is the broadcast level as good? Does it have as many bells and whistles? No. But it's nice televised golf, usually during part of the week when there isn't regular golf being played. A lot of these run on Monday through Wednesday or different things. But it's nice to see, just in general, NBC expanding on what they have. I mean, they got the rights to the NCAA championships. They should want to expand their college golf coverage because that's going to make there be more interest in the NCAAs when it comes around in the spring. So I've really been into that, into the expanded college golf coverage.
With the playoff site, the national championship moving to California, I mean, that's another opportunity for it to be on primetime, right? Are you pretty bullish on the future of televised collegiate golf? Feels like a huge opportunity.
You know, I think there's so much like, I'll just do this as what I'm out on is like, okay. I'm out on, I guess I'm out on what I don't like is the murky future of televised golf. I think we're at a point right now where it's really hard to understand where it's going to be in like 3 or 4 years or 5 years. What's going on now with commercial load, these in all the streaming channels, whether it's, Peacock, there's Amazon, all these giants, Apple, Netflix, and then with the downturn in cable subscribers, I think we're at a place where the televised golf situation is going to be drastically different. I think we're going to be probably looking, Golf Channel. I don't know how long that's going to be around, right? It's just an interesting moment for televised golf. I think like the way it's working now is not sustainable. So I guess that's also what I'm out on. But like I'm very in on like I think college golf could be streamed. There was an outfit that was doing the streaming coverage before COVID, and I think COVID kind of ran it down. But there could be more golf in a lower production version, if that makes sense.
Well, I think PGA Tour Live is some of the best golf coverage that we get. Like, it's one of my favorite products in golf, and that doesn't require a million bells and whistles. So if things look a little bit more like that, I don't think that's a reason to be pessimistic.
Yeah, I'm just curious, like where is pro golf going to be televised in 4 years? To clarify, like kind of where I started. Mm-hmm. I had something else that I was out on, but your answer has moved me over there. Is like, what does that look like? Is it still network TV in 6 or 7 years, or 4 to 6 years, or does it go exclusively to an app?
Seems like if it's anything like any other sports, it seems like it can only move in that direction. This is probably a bigger question, Andy, but with the TV deal that the PGA Tour has, and knowing that as part of those contracts, there are strength of field stipulations, and there's kind of that death spiral outcome that I don't know the details of how close we are to that. Has that been ringing around in your head? Like, wow, some of this stuff could get triggered and a lot of these deals could become moot?
I think, yeah. I think like something that to just monitor is LIV with all this. Like, LIV's looking for a TV deal. I've heard that they're asking for a big dollar amount. But like with LIV, what if they continue to invest and take more talent away, and that strength of field thing becomes something that NBC or CBS can't ignore, where they say you are not delivering? Like, it's funny. I was watching golf as I flew today, and it was great that I was watching golf while I flew, but. Sands was talking about how none of the pro sports teams were in town. The Raiders weren't in town this week. So come watch the world's best at the Shriners. And in my head, I was like, well, like these aren't the world's best at the Shriners. And what if more PGA Tour events? Like, I think like they sell a lot of regular PGA, like the Fall. I don't think they sell that as the best. but they sell the John Deere in Detroit and Minneapolis.
Mexico Open.
Yeah, they sell that as the best, even though there might be one of the top 20 players there. What if a lot of events eventually get to zero the top 20 players? That's where I think they run into a really big problem.
All right, I'm with you. That's something that's been ringing around in my head too, and that only feeds some of those theories about the official world golf rankings, right? And some of the coordination between the governing body. So, I mean, that's hitting on that. All right, I'll get to what I'm out on. As somebody who's pro rollback, Andy, I've got to put my foot down somewhere. I'm out on these screenshots of 400-yard drives that players are hitting in the desert at either Black Desert or at Shriners, and people tweeting it's time to roll the ball back. That the anti-rollback crowd is often disingenuous with how they use data. The pro rollback crowd cannot follow suit and also be disingenuous with data when it's downwind, super firm conditions, a 400-yard drive. I could hit one 350, and that's nothing to do with how far I hit the golf ball. We got to stop doing that. You can't take a Jadon Blake
65-year-old Jadon hit one 330 last week.
There are plenty of instances to screenshot and say that things are out of control. Firm desert conditions downwind. We can't be doing that.
All right, I can buy that. I think it's like you need to more focus on the carry and what they're doing to make like what used to be challenging carries just completely elementary.
For sure. And like 18 at Riviera is a good example where that's been completely decimated by technology, and those conditions usually don't change a ton year over year. Like, look at how the driving distance on that hole has changed. Not maybe 40-mile-an-hour winds downwind like we got at Shriners on this past Friday afternoon.
You could have added something I'm out on is Riviera adding the back 280 T on 4, which is just
curious what you thought of that.
Which is just going to exacerbate the Kikuya front issue that they have. They're
Crazy.
Just going to make it harder to hit the green. The hardest green to hit in professional golf, the 4th at Riviera. And it's not because of the golf architecture. It's because of the Kikuya surround.
I'm so out on that. Maybe we can save that for Riviera week and get back into it. But they've really botched that hole.
Yeah. All right. Today, I'm excited about our pod today. We're going to talk about Justin Thomas, just the state of Justin Thomas, where he's at, what he's done, which I think like he's a Hall of Fame lock at this point. He is I think you probably could put him in the generational talent space. But we're going to kind of dive in. Obviously, he's hit a patch in his career where it hasn't been great. The level of great that we've become accustomed to. He's 31 years old. So I thought it was a good time to just have a kind of a frank discussion about Justin Thomas's career, the highlights, and kind of where he's at now and where we might think he's going to go. But first, let's talk about our partner, Stripe. We are extremely excited to partner with Stripe on this podcast. And one of the reasons that I'm so excited is that I have been a Stripe customer for years. So it's always nice when like a big company that you partner with reaches out, because it's like, oh, I love you. I have a lot of service providers that I might not have that general reaction to, but Stripe handles our money maybe the most important aspect of running a business they handle. And I've never once had a single issue with Stripe in the 8 years that we've worked together. So for us, they do a lot of payment processing, but they do a lot more than that. They, in terms of payments, they process, they power 1% of the total global GDP. So they work with businesses the size, small businesses like ourselves, but then they also work with giants like Hertz, Lyft, Salesforce, Squarespace, WordPress, Zoom, Toyota, giant companies. So The neat thing about Stripe is that it is not like a specialized product that's only for enterprise companies. Stripe can help just about any business. So there are a couple other products that they have. They have optimized checkout suite. It basically helps people not abandon their cart by providing a really wide range of payment options. They also have a billing product where they work with 300,000 businesses. That's more than anybody else, and create billing software that allows for monthly subscriptions, usage-based billing, invoicing, anything that you need from a billing standpoint. So if you are interested in getting Stripe to work with your business, as they've worked so well with ours, you can learn more about them and what they do at stripe.com. All right, Justin Thomas. Let's talk about Justin Thomas. Let's just dive. I'm going to rattle off some basics about him, and then we can kind of jump off from there. So everybody's kind of situated. Justin Thomas, one of the best active players in the world from a resume standpoint. 15 wins on the PGA Tour, 2 major championships, 1 Players' Championship in there. He reached number 1 in the world rankings. He has 3 Ryder Cup appearances, 3 President's Cup showings. He was the Player of the Year in 2016, 2017 on the PGA Tour. He had 5 wins, his first major, and he was the FedEx Cup champion that year. Justin Thomas was kind of a can't miss. He turned pro after just 2 years at Alabama. He won the Haskins Award as a freshman there. People knew about him long before his college days. He made the cut at the Wyndham as a 16-year-old. He was the 3rd youngest to make a PGA Tour cut. He got to the tour very quickly after turning pro. He played on the web.com tour then in 2014. He won his first event as a pro, finished 5th on the money list and 3rd after the finals. So he basically has just breezed up to the tour. And then as a rookie was very good. He finished 32nd in the FedEx Cup as a rookie. Do you know who he finished runner-up to in the Rookie of the Year voting?
No.
Daniel Berger.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah. So Daniel Berger, I think, pretty much if one player makes it to Atlanta, they're going to be the Rookie of the Year. So Daniel Berger wins the Rookie of the Year that year. His first win came shortly after that rookie year. He won in November in Malaysia, an event he won twice. The late great, unfortunately shuttered CIMB. I always loved the odd hours, the CIMB, hot, muggy, rainy conditions that it presented. Just for context here, his last win was the 2022 PGA Championship. That was 2.5 years ago. And then he was the last man to qualify. He was 30th going into East Lake this year, and he missed the top 70 last year. So that's kind of the reason for this talk. If everything was hunky-dory in Justin Thomas land, I don't think we'd be having this discussion. When I say Justin Thomas, like what's generally the first thing that you think of?
Big question. I think of elite wedge play. Like if I needed somebody to hit a 105-yard shot to 4 feet, who do I want hitting that shot? And Justin Thomas is among the first names that comes to mind. I don't know if this is cheating on the question a little bit, but in doing the research, one thing that I gained an appreciation for was how strong the beginning of his career was. And overall, as you zoom out, how weak his major championship resume is outside of the 2 wins. Not to discount the 2 wins. Obviously, those are not many guys get to 2 wins, but he doesn't have a great major championship track record. And so I think we'll probably get into this a little bit, but some of what kind of courses does he succeed on versus what have the last couple of years looked like in majors? I think there are some questions there.
Yeah, if I was going to answer that question, I would say that he is just one of the most fun golfers to watch. There's there's kind of like a ability to just really pour it on with Justin Thomas. There's a shot making element to his game. His short game is just out of this world. Like I think he'd be among my 3 or 4 favorite people to watch hit chip shots, and I think there's just a general charisma and energy about his game that makes him really like, I think like one of the things that golf has struggled with in a post-Tiger era is like golfers that people are genuinely excited to watch play golf. I'm genuinely excited to watch Justin Thomas play golf in person and on television because you're going to see him hit shots that other players aren't going to hit. I think like some of that excitement with JT also is his volatility. You see loose shots from him. You see, but you also see the great shots. And there's an element of him not being kind of that boring type player. And I wonder, I pulling up the major record was really interesting to look at because, as you said, it hasn't been great. And I think like some of that volatility in the game that it's not unpredictability, but there's like almost like a little bit of a wildness in the game. Probably is what cuts against major championship golf. 72 holes on the supreme toughest tests, which require you to just have that high level of precision throughout a 72 hole tournament.
Yeah, I didn't know if we were going to get into this part of this as the conversation as quickly as maybe we are, but that's a huge note that I have with Justin Thomas, that a big part of skill and being one of the best players in the world is consistency. And I think with Justin Thomas, the inconsistency maybe sometimes gets framed as can get hot, sometimes he's not as good, but you want somebody that can get hot because they can win majors. I think where I've more landed is the best players in the world are consistent and you can count on them to show up, like a Xander Schauffele, like a Scotty Scheffler. And that is keeping Justin Thomas in this tier that's well below them. I don't know what you think of this theory, Andy, but something that's been rolling around in my head a lot is that like 2015 to 2024 has been a transformational era from the way that people play sports. Analytics, information, within course management in golf, the sport has changed a lot. And that pretty much overlaps with the beginning of Justin Thomas's career until now. And back in those days, people made a lot of mistakes on the golf course far more often than they do now. We're at a point where golfers are optimized. And again, this is happening in other sports too, where they're going for it on fourth down more often in the NFL. Like we are in an optimized era. And when you're Justin Thomas and you hit those loose shots and he tries some of these shots that are creative and artistic, but maybe not the smartest shots, you can't get away with those anymore like you could have in 8-9 years ago when things weren't as optimized and as tidy. What do you think of that theory?
I think it's a theory, but I think like you're discounting the consistency that he had at one point in his career. And I think you hit on one piece of what I would suggest is going on is that this optimized era of golf is going to make careers shorter. And you have to appreciate the greatness when you have it because it's probably going to be short-lived. I think like I found this old SB Nation article. I thought it might have been Brendan's when I clicked on it, but it was also a friend of the program, Kyle Robbins, after the 2016 Quail Hollow tournament. The article really was framed around how with Justin Thomas, there was a new face of American golf. And it was going to be him and Jordan Spieth duking it out. And they kind of like, the way it worked is they almost like missed each other. And they were great. They were both great in this period of time, but they were just like, they had these like bisecting streets. But he said Thomas is mid 2000s Big 12 distilled into a PGA Tour player. So for you, That was like when Texas Tech was scoring like 65 points a game. It was when like the spread offense was just revolutionizing college football, but it was like the start of that. Sure, it's perhaps going to go a little wild sometimes, but it's fun as hell, and there's going to be lots of yards through the air. And I think like JT was awesome for a good chunk of years. So his end of year world ranks, and this is I think the end of this is like a little bit more, it skews like a little safer. It should be higher because of the LIV defections. But he went 2015, 37th, 2016, 22nd. 2017, end of year, 3rd. 2018, end of year, 4th. 2019, end of year, 4th. 2020, end of year, 3rd. 2021, end of year, 7th. 2022, end of year, 8th. So you got, and then 23 ended at 26, and right now in 24, he's 33rd. So he's probably going to end 35, 36 in the world. But you go there, you got 6 years of him being, without a doubt, a top 10 player in the world, and 5 years of him being a top 5 player in the world. I mean, that's pretty rarefied air. And I just think it might have just been a short window.
I'm with you. I don't mean to suggest that it's just the mistakes that are keeping him from it. I mean, I'm sure one thing you wanted to get into a little bit is where has his game fallen off. But playing off of what you were just saying there, he used to be very long on the PGA Tour. And he's still not short, but his ball speed has kind of remained. His ball speed in 2016 was 175, and he was 26th on tour that year. And in 2024, it was 178. It went up 3 miles an hour over that time period. And that's 45th on tour now. The game's been getting a lot faster, and Justin Thomas has only gotten a little bit faster. His distance advantage is not like it used to be. And the other thing that he's clearly gotten worse as a putter. He's never been a great putter, but he had a couple of very strong putting years between like 2016 and 2018 where he was consistently positive. Andy, maybe you realized this, but he was one of the worst putters on tour this year. He was losing a half a shot a round, and he was like 165th out of 175 golfers on the PGA Tour this year. He's gone from being an average putter, or maybe a slightly below, depending on the year, to being a bad putter. And when you're as strong as he is with his wedges, giving himself a lot of those 6 to 10 foot looks, if you're an average putter and you're converting some of those and it flips to where you're a bad putter and those aren't going in, you're going to see it in the scores.
Yeah, I would agree with the take on the
power,
really the distance. I think like that's like something that is, it's similar. I think similar things happened to Ricky Fowler just a couple years earlier and later, where Ricky Fowler was like kind of like that same class of driving distance when he came out, like a top 20 driver, the driving distance guy like Justin Thomas. And I think like JT, I charted this, like he's still above average, but those years that he was really great, he was, when he came out on tour, 2014, 2015, he was 15th, 24th, the next year, 8th and 11th in driving distance. Now he's kind of more hovering around the 20s. If you averaged it out, high 20s, that's a big difference. That's a big lot. That's from going from probably like what, if you think about like like players in other sports, like going from like the 14th best player in the sport to the 29th. That's a big drop. And it's like it's going from elite to above average, really.
That's losing some LIV guys.
Yeah, and that's
Bryson,
losing,
Rahm.
Yeah. And so when that happens, you need to have the skills pick up in other places. And we've seen it though with his short game. I like one thing I had in here, he's become extraordinary around the greens. I'd never like done the deep dive on his around the green play. I mean, like he's gone from when he came out on tour, he was probably about above average to he is otherworldly around the greens now. So he has improved other skills, but the putter is the big glaring hole. It's when Justin Thomas putts well, he wins a lot. And I think that's evidenced by the year that he won 5 times. In that year, he was 43rd in strokes gained putting. Now, like if you compare that in 2018, 2019, he had far superior skill set distribution with his strokes gained. Like he was categorically better, but he was 144th in putting. And how many times do you think he won?
Which year was that?
This is 2018, 2019.
Once?
One win.
No, 2018. Didn't he win Honda in 2018? So
well, it was 2018 fall to 19.
Okay.
So
fall. Okay. Yeah. Once 2018 fall to. Okay. Once.
Yeah. So he won once that year. And he was it was as consistent as you've ever seen him though. Like he had top 10 in a third of his starts, and he had 2/3 of his starts were top 25s. So the ball striking was so good, but the putter, I mean, since really the 2018, he hasn't finished inside the top 85 in putting.
You may hate this comparison, Andy. This might be disrespectful, but when I'm looking at the courses that Justin Thomas has done well on and some of the lack of success in major championships, I kind of get a little bit of rich man's Webb Simpson. That might feel insulting, but Webb Simpson was a great player for a long time. And when you look at the golf courses where those two have similar success with the win at the Players, Wyndham, Sony, Scottsdale, Harbor Town, these kind of crafty, a lot of wedges, short game putting, those tend to be the types of courses that Justin Thomas has done fairly well on. And when you talk about major championships, a key differentiator between major championships and courses like those is length and having to hit driver well and accurately often. I mean, it depends on the setup, but Justin Thomas has always been a below accurate driver. So if he's now losing a little bit of distance to the field, I don't think it's unreasonable to expect that going forward, you'll see him do well on a lot of these softer setups and struggle on some of these major championship-like setups.
I think, it's funny. It makes me think of the Eduardo Molinari pod that you did on this channel a couple of weeks ago, where he talked about you have to drive it extraordinary at Augusta National. And everybody's always like, Justin Thomas's entire career, it's been like this guy's game is perfect for Augusta National. Look at, he is a great iron player, without a doubt, one of the best iron players in the world. But like what always gets underrated about Augusta National is that driving accuracy aspect of it. You have to drive. It's advantageous to drive it long, but you also have to drive it well, because that gets you into position to use your advantage with the irons. And I think that's probably the thing that's held him back at Augusta National, is just frankly not driving the ball as well as a lot of other players.
The 13th hole at Augusta has given him a lot of issues, and off the tee in particular, where JT is not super comfortable hitting a draw or even hitting something fairly straight, tends to hit that cut, and he's wiped a bunch of those into the pine straw on the right-hand side there. So that's always something to watch with JT, and kind of hits on that point of him not being necessarily that accurate off of the tee. He tends to hit about 55% of his fairways. He's nowhere near as accurate as somebody like Scotty Scheffler. And to be the best in the world, you can't be giving up shots like that. Andy, on the Masters, struggles. I was just pulling his strokes gained by major. So strokes gained per round by major. How do you think he's fared in each one? If you had to rank them top to bottom, what would your guess be?
PGA by far and away his best major. I would guess that his next best major is the Open, followed by by the U.S. Open, and then the Masters.
putting you on the spot here. So you're right. PGA is by far the best. Positive 1.8 strokes around. That's not adjusted for field strength, but by far and away, that's been his best, and he has 2 wins at a PGA. So not shocking. Next is actually the Masters at about a stroke per round. He's been okay, but he hasn't really threatened to win at all. And
had that. Well, I want to. He had the one a couple years ago where he hit the ball in the water on Saturday on 13, where it really looked like he was going to win. 22? Maybe on Sunday. Yeah, it was a one. That was a great run that he had there. Because like I like to base, like, I think people get too caught up in looking at Wikipedia pages, and I think like one way to like think about majors is like, was there a point on the weekend where I thought this guy's going to win the tournament? Because it's like he absolutely felt like he was going to win the Masters it would have been 2022
and finished T8.
Yeah, finished T8. So like we've danced around this subject. So he's got 2 major wins. He only has 1 other top 5 in a major. I was like shocked.
It's crazy. Andy, since 2016, he's played in 34 majors, 34 of the 35 majors that have happened. So that was his first full year of majors. He's only missed 1. So only 5 golfers have played more majors than he has in that span. Do you know how many top 10s he has in those 34 starts?
4.
8. That's the same number as Tommy Fleetwood and Cam Smith in that period. It's the 11th highest total. It's not a top 5 total, and that includes JT's best years of golf. And in terms of I did top 10 percentage of golfers with at least 10 starts over that span. JT's at 23%. And you compare that to guys like Scheffler, 57%, Rory, 54%, Xander, 50%. The best players in the world are getting top 10s in majors at about a 50% clip, and JT's been at 23%. I mean, it's just nowhere near up to those standards.
Yeah, I think like you have to be, in today's day and age, like you have to have like an otherworldly skill, but also important is not having any categorical weakness across the board. And I think like where JT's like extraordinarily great with irons and wedges, but the driver and the putter can be like a problem. Whereas like you look at Scottie Scheffler, sure, the putter can be an issue, but everything else shows up every single day. It kind of speaks to that consistency that you were talking about. Same with Rory. Rory's like, he's rock solid with every, like, sure, like people can say, oh, his wedge play can be disappointing at times. But the driver's always there. The long iron play has always been great. And the short game is really good. And then the putting is above average.
I think that's a good point with Rory too, that if you're going to look at the wedges, and this is something that has to be called out with Justin Thomas, some of the fewest wedges you're going to have are major championships. So when your strength is wedge play and leaning on that, and then you get to a golf course that's 7,500 yards and maybe cold and windy, sticking wedges to 5 feet, if that's the way that you win often on tour, which to an extent that is kind of how Justin Thomas has had a lot of his success, that goes away a little bit in major championships. And I think that's relevant to the Justin Thomas story. The lack of the driving inconsistency combined with sort of mitigating one of his biggest strengths.
I think though, like one of the things, and if we just discussed majors, it would be a little bit of, I think like missing some of like the Justin Thomas folklore. Like I think like Justin Thomas has been lionized as this great Ryder Cup, President's Cup player. Why that is, I think, is because match play, if the golf played more match play, I think Justin Thomas would be a more highly thought of player because that variability wouldn't be as penalized. The idea of getting hot and hitting iron shots close, like match play lends itself more to the style of play that Justin Thomas has, where really great shots, really extraordinary outcomes are rewarded more highly than just middle of the green all day long, par, I'm not going to make a big number, and I'm just going to run into 4 birdies every round. Like match play, it accentuates the dramatics a little bit more and also allows a player with the shot shaping capabilities of him to put those on display and reach pins that others can't get to.
I think with that, Andy, this gets to the charisma of his game that you were talking about. I do think match play is a little bit of a different animal, not just with some of your bad shots being penalized less, because a 7 and making a 7 and making a 5 are often the same thing in match play. You're going to lose the hole either way. But I do think there's a little bit of a gamesmanship and athleticism that JT has, and getting in your face a little bit. I think it can be overblown when people are advocating for him to make the Ryder Cup team, like in 2023 when he was fully out of form. But I do believe JT is one of those guys who elevates his game in those high pressure situations. And if every week were match play, I think a lot of guys would be intimidated by him.
Yeah, I think that's totally right. He has like a like as you said, an attitude about him. And like I think he has a way he gets under his competitor's skin. You know, I know he gets under the European tour European skin. Whether or not he's playing well, he's going to bother them. And I think it's like a match play trait. And it's like one of those things where like, I think Justin Thomas's best golf would be if the tour played more match play, it would just make him a bigger star.
Where are you on? Go ahead.
I was going to ask you, like, what's your favorite Justin Thomas win or moment as a professional?
It might be dumb to pick something that's not the most high profile, but his win at Sony in 2017 where he won by 7.
Yeah.
After he had won the week, he won the week before by 3 at Kapalua, and then he won by 7 at Sony, and it was like, all right, this guy might burn the world down this year. And then he went on to win the PGA that year, 2017 at Quail Hollow. I just distinctly remember that Sony Open and thinking like, yeah, I don't know how many golfers can hang with him.
Yeah, and that's what's crazy about where we're at now. It doesn't feel that long ago where it was, oh, this guy, like, who's the best player in the world? It was shortlist. I think like why we're having this discussion is like now it might not be there. For me, it's the players when I at the time I was the mayor of Westy Island, Lee Westwood Island, and I was looking at that, and I was rooting for Westwood, and like you could just see JT barreling down, and there was just this absolute terrifying nature of JT where he's gonna win. Like there was no doubt in my mind when they made the turn. I think he birdied 9. Oh, this is over. JT is gonna win, and I think like. In that tournament, also just with the weather, he hit some just incredible shots. I think it was on Saturday. The shot making was just out of this world in the weather, and it was just an example of like, listen, like this is an era where you don't need to play a lot of shots, but to me, like some of the most memorable rounds of the last 10 years have been JT, and they all revolve around really bad weather and him hitting shots that other people don't have. So that makes me, it just kind of makes me sad. Like I think he's pretty vehemently against the rollback, but I think he's also one of the players that would be most rewarded if equipment was rolled back, not just the ball, but smaller driver heads, because I think he's supremely talented compared to his peers with some of the shaping, the ability to hit shots.
I think those elite ball strikers who struggle with the putter, you're talking about candidates for benefiting from a rollback. So yeah, I think JT should be in support of it, at least if he were concerned about his career foremost. Andy, what do you think 2025? I don't know. I don't want to jump the shark, but what do you think are realistic expectations for him in 2025? Like that's a big question I have, is where do you think he stacks up in the world?
I'd love to see him try going to Broome. We've seen this. Like, I just would like to. I'm sure. I don't know if he's experimented with it. I think there's like a lot of people that have a lot of pride that stops them from doing this. But I think the putting's at a level that this should be considered an option or some alternative putting style. Because what's going on right now isn't working for him. That being said, like, I was like pretty encouraged by last year. I thought the iron play was bad in 2023. It was, by his standards, it was the worst it's ever been. I think like 2024, the iron play was back. It's just like he would have won a couple tournaments if he just wasn't one of the worst putters on tour.
Do you think it's realistic for him to be a top 5 player in the world again?
I don't. I think I think we're at the point where, you know, if he putts well, he's a top 10 guy. If he putts kind of at his career average, he's probably like a top 15 player. What about you?
I'm with you. I think what I have written down is that I think the bull case for JT is being like the 7th best golfer in the world. I think he's pretty far from that Scotty, Xander tier clearly, and Rahm and Rory right behind it. I don't really think he's that close to threatening any of those 4. And then you just think about all the youth, Ludwig, Morikawa, Oberg, him getting past multiple of those guys, I think is highly, highly unlikely. And I guess the outcome I'm expecting is that JT is somewhere around the 12th best golfer in the world over the next couple of years. That feels like a pretty realistic expectation with and honestly not a ton of success in majors.
I mean, like at that level, there's still majors to pick off. But you know, to me, it seems like probably like if he gets a 3rd major, that's a big win at this point. But I'm not going to write him off in majors. I think he can win 1 or 2 more. And I think he could probably win 10 more PGA Tour events in his career. Maybe
I might
8.
be a little lower. I might be a little lower than that.
7 and 1 possible. I think, like, realistically, how many PGA Tour events do I think he hasn't won 1 in 2.5 years. So I would probably say, you know, 5 more PGA Tour wins. What would you say if I was to set it over under?
At 5, I would take the under, assuming he's going to play mostly signature events. I mean, if he shows up to Amex,
that's the other thing. Yeah,
right. Like that seriously changes it. But high profile events, I would take the under on 5.
Okay. That's interesting. I think like one thing to note, like I'd be curious, and I don't know if you have the numbers in front of you. You hit on the ball speed increase over time, or lack thereof.
Yeah.
I'd be interested, like someone like Rory McIlroy, what he's been able to do in the same period. I think he's had considerable ball speed gains.
Yes.
And I think that's like kind of the difference between Rory, who's been able to kind of endure and can stay at an elite level, versus a lot of his peers.
And I think that's the right way to think about it, Andy, is that we might see some of these golfers who are highly talented, who play unbelievable golf for 5-ish years, like Justin Thomas, and very few, only the legends, the once in a 10 to 15 year type of golfers are going to play 10 to 12 years of good golf. And we're talking about Rory, maybe Scheffler, we'll see, like maybe Rahm. Spieth and JT looked like that, and neither one of them is going to end up likely playing 12-year careers. I think that's the right way to think about it.
High level golf.
High level.
Yeah.
Right.
Like that's, yeah. So
top 15 level golf.
All right. Well, that's the case for the case where we're at with JT. This was a fun chat. Joseph, let's get to recommendations. What are you recommending?
This is an easy one for me. I don't watch a ton of TV, but I've started watching The Penguin on HBO. Do you know what that is, Andy?
Is it a Batman spinoff?
It is. And I'm not even into the comic book series and stuff, but the Penguin is excellent. Profiles the Penguin, the villain's rise to notoriety in Gotham. It's very well reviewed. I haven't gotten to the 4th episode yet, but apparently the 4th episode is like one of the best episodes of TV in a while. I'm 2 episodes in and haven't been this invested in the show in a while. So full recommendation on the Penguin.
Penguin. All right. My recommendation is for parents of young kids. Screen time is a very hard thing. TV, you need to get stuff done. It like becomes like an inevitable thing. Then you notice that your kid is like different when they watch TV early in the day, or different when they watch a lot of TV versus little TV that you're able to give them a lot of time. Something that we've discovered that's been really great is like there are these like audio stories for kids on Spotify. And we just like put those on, and what we've noticed, our daughter like will listen to it and play at the same time by herself. So if you like need to cook dinner, it's like a really nice like thing you can put on and get 30 minutes or 40 minutes. And it's not the TV, which like I'm like very I've become recently very opposed to the television. I like actually like it, really dislike it and what it does to kids. So anyways, that's my little tip for parents of young children.
Does she fall asleep to the audiobooks?
No. It's like she'll just like sit and play and listen to Beauty and the Beast, 45-minute telling of Beauty and the Beast.
Because I know you've been mounting a war on listening to podcasts as you fall asleep. And if I found out that your daughter is listening to audiobooks to fall asleep, that would have been quite the hypocritical stance.
That wouldn't happen. It's clear that you don't have a young child, because they would not fall asleep to that. So anyways, that's my recommendation. We'll be back later this week with another edition of the Fried Egg Podcast. Big thanks to PJ Clark for editing and producing this episode. PJ, I hope tonight, this is Sunday night, bodes well for your Mets, and you keep the dream alive. If you haven't yet, check out our membership, Club TFE. It is $120 a year, and we put up a ton of content. We're really proud also of the community it's built. I was out at an event last week, and a member was telling me about how he met his like best golf buddy through Club TFE. In the comments section, they found out that they were members at the same club, and they've become, they play a ton of golf together now. So it's neat to hear those stories. I'm really excited about where it's going, and hopefully we'll make some strides on making the community even better in 2025. So thanks to everybody that's joined. If you haven't checked it out yet, check it out. It is at thefriedegg.com/membership. All right. Thanks for listening. We'll be back again this week.